Guys, coming in for Flesh and Bone, episode 5, M.I.A. And holy shit, one episode this was. I mean, this show has had some really disturbing scenes, but this was by far the most disturbing episode we have had so far. Especially at the end of this episode, definitely. I really love this episode. By far the best episode so far, definitely. I know some people might have thought this episode was over the top, but I thought it had just the right amount of drama, and it was really crazy, and just some really great stuff in this episode. Again, some really great character moments, but also a really shocking plot twist at the end. I don't really know what it means, but it's very compelling, and I definitely really loved it, and we will get into that. But let's just get into this episode. We have 3 episodes left. Well, I have 3 episodes left, and again, I hope you guys aren't watching these reviews because, in case, if you haven't binged the show, then you're better off not watching any of these reviews. It's probably why these reviews aren't that popular because I don't think a lot of people are binging the show like I am. But, I'm trying to get this done quickly. So I have 3 episodes left, and let's just get in this episode. We see, obviously, I knew what MIA means. I don't need to explain what MIA is. I think we know what it means. It means missing in action, which very much applies to the ending of this episode. Now, Bryan does not make an appearance this whole episode. I don't know if we're going to see him again. I hope we do. I hope for his character's sake we do. Not just because I think the actor that plays Bryan is quite good. I think he's a very good actor, but also because of the fact that, he's one of the most important characters of the show, and I hope we see him again. So, we see Sergei shows Daphne ballet slippers he has in a cage that belong to Perina Lignani, and were destroyed during a single performance of Swan Lake. He asks if she's familiar with her work, and she says, of course. She introduced a part of Black Swan, one of Sergei's favorite ballets, and Daphne says it's one of the hardest to dance, and she says she should head down. He says she has plenty of time, and she just arrived, and he asked her to sit down. And we realize that Sergei was actually the one that actually transferred the funds to the company, and not Chalmer, which I really like that twist. I mean, I didn't really think of that happening. I thought that Daphne was just going to lie to them, but no, someone actually did pay the funds, and I like seeing that Sergei actually did this. And it would make sense why Daphne said, that this is a one-time thing, because obviously she doesn't want it to be revealed to be Sergei. I don't know if they're going to find out, but that could be very interesting. She thanks him for his help, and she really wanted to have this opportunity. He says he hasn't received a thank you card or anything. She says she knows it's not ideal, but his donation has to stay anonymous. He says he's left on the cold like a shabby child with nose pressed up against glass of a bakery, longing for a single bite. She says she's sorry, but it's just for now, and she knows he understands that. He says he does, but once they spend his money, he wants something out of it. Since she won't take him to the ballet, he wants her to bring the ballet to him. So he decides to basically throw a gala on the yacht with many people, and ballet will be part of it, and she will dance she will dance the Swan Lake on the yacht, and she says she will give Perina a run for her money, and he says Claire will dance too. She says who wouldn't miss it, and I really love this scene. I mean, just seeing the bond that Daphne and Sergei have, I really liked. I was worried we weren't going to see a lot of it, but I definitely really liked it, especially because the show is mainly in Claire's perspective. I like that we actually saw a lot of Daphne in this episode. Definitely really good stuff. Daphne is one of my favorite characters by far. So he says that Claire's at Anastasia a lot lately and always with the same man, Cameron Miller, and he says he's good for business, and she tells her to make sure she keeps it inside the club, and Claire is then with Cameron, and the scenes with Claire and Cameron I really enjoy in this episode. He asks for a real name, and he says 2 weeks ago she fell to pieces in her arms, and he's respect her privacy, given her space, and in that moment he had hopes and thought she was coming towards him, but she's not. I was just surprised by the commitment that Claire had. I mean, the fact she gave him 2 weeks. I mean, you think that she just pushed him aside, but like I said, I think Claire really has grown a lot from not just Tony's advice, who doesn't make an appearance this episode. Tony isn't in this episode at all, which was fine. She didn't have to be. But also from, I think, just her experience with Bryan. I think it's helped her grow. You can definitely see that in this episode. So basically, he says you respect her privacy, given her space, and in that moment, he had hopes and thought she was coming towards him, but she's not. He asks if he's an idiot, and if he is, to just tell him because he'll stop and get out of there and leave her alone. She says she doesn't want that, and he asks what she does, and she says she dances, and that's really it. She doesn't really do much else, which is true. I mean, that really is her life. And he asks her what she wants to do outside the club, and I really like this scene here because, you really get to see why Claire has this, deep affection for reading, specifically for the book The Velveteen Rabbit, which we know she has an attachment to. And she talks about how the book very much applies to her situation because the Velveteen Rabbit's skin, you know, gets destroyed and battered and it's pretty much destroyed and everything, but despite that they still love him, and she says she hopes it can happen for her. That's what she wants, to be loved enough to become real, because the Velveteen Rabbit becomes real when he is all battered, and she wants the same thing to happen to her. And she really doesn't see any people really seeing her as real. She thinks people see her as a celebrity or as a sex symbol, and she really doesn't want that. She wants to be something real, and I think it's very interesting. Then why does she continue the club? I think it's just because she needs some money and she really is transfixed by the affection that she gets. I think it's just a different experience for her. Very interesting. And I think also Claire's kind of lost right now. So he says that is awesome and says he has to let it. And I love that he actually liked what she said. I mean, that's probably the first guy that actually understands her. Besides Romeo, of course. He says he has to let her take her out of there now, and he says they can start small, something easy, but to please come into his boss's party Friday night, it will be obnoxious and boring. And he says she is 1,000 times more real than any of his hedge fund friends with their vapid wives, and she thanks him, and he says they can make fun of them. Her company will make this whole thing bearable, and so basically they have plans. And I like seeing Claire actually going on a date with this guy. It was going to be interesting to see. I was looking forward to it. So Mia gets out of bed, and by far, we get the best scenes with Mia in this episode. I mean, so far, all we've seen of Mia is that she's kind of a bitch. She is a bitch. She's very catty. She's very much, very stuck up. She, has a lot of problems she's going on with, and we see what all those problems are in this episode, which I really love seeing, and I think it makes Mia just a better character. It's not that Mia wasn't a good character, it's just I don't think a bitch is good enough character, and I like they actually gave her character development. I like seeing that. I was worried that Mia was not going to have a lot to do, because, we only have 8 episodes, but what they were able to do with her in this episode I really liked. So she gets out of bed, she looks at herself, and right away she's not happy with what she sees. So Romeo tells Claire he gets nervous, her walking alone so late, it gets later and later. She says she lost track of the time, and he asks if anyone came after him. Once again, I just love this scene between Romeo and Claire, mainly because we didn't really get any in the last episode. We had that scene with Romeo and Bryan, but nothing between Romeo and Claire, and I really like this. He says she's got to be more careful, and she said it's a fine line between careful and boring, and says he doesn't have to worry about her. He says dangerous times are upon them, and everything is moving faster since she's gotten there. He says the only thing that keeps away the gray is the dead of their own, and she says she has a huge day ahead of her, and he says he will keep his post until Bryan returns, who he refers to as Jim Joe, and he asks her that is, and he explains her brother, and she tells him she keeps herself safe. He doesn't even think Bryan is bad. He sees it as someone to protect her, and, he doesn't really know that she's, that he's what he's really doing to Claire, which is definitely, it's gonna be interesting to see if Bryan returns. Is Romeo gonna find out what Bryan's really doing? Because I think it definitely is very interesting. So Mia then eats egg yolk, and Claire arrives. She says she almost didn't recognize her with food in her mouth, and Mia asks what's up with her. Claire says they're her eggs, and she says she's stuck with her living in her apartment. Now, the fact that Mia was eating egg yolk was very interesting, and she tells Claire that her mother is coming tomorrow and is going to stay there, and she tells her she does not want Bryan back there, obviously because of what he did, which she does not tell Claire what happened, which I'm not surprised. If you guys remember, Mia only really trusts Daphne. That's the only person that Mia really trusts. Now, we haven't really had a lot of scenes between Mia and Daphne because of the friendship that Mia and Claire have had. I think that's why we really haven't had any scenes between them. And basically, Jessica then drops off Molly at school, and a member of the board says Molly may now return to class until her tuition is paid in full. Jessica gives her money, and Diane says she's sorry, but Jessica threatens her and leaves, and you can just see the toll that this is taking on Jessica. Obviously, she's dealing with a lot, and she's lashing out at people she shouldn't, and I like seeing that. Definitely, you can tell that Jessica's under a lot of stress. So at rehearsal, Ivana watches, Mia gets distracted, and she almost knocks down, what's her name? I can't think of her name right now. I can't think of her name right now. Patrice. She almost knocks down Patrice, just right there, almost knocks her down. And she says she thinks she has food poisoning or something. Mia says she never eats eggs and it must be salmonella. Ivana says she's pathetic and everything about her is weak and tells her to go home. So Paul goes to where the ballet will be performed, and I like that we actually saw where the ballet is going to be performed, because obviously we only have like a few episodes till we're gonna see this ballet performed, and he's not impressed by the lighting at all. He's actually not impressed by light. Actually, we do see Tony in this episode. I forgot to say that we do see Tony. He's not impressed by the lighting. He greets Kiira and Claire good morning and asks Claire if she's ready to be venerated, worshipped, and adored. And he says she's some kind of civet and he loves it. He says to show the camera her marrow and strip herself bare and let it devour her. She says they need a publicity shot that will make every guy go nuts. He says they're graced by two of the hottest dancers to ever grace their stage and says he's relying on them and says to engorge them. So they see Tony, and she tells Claire she loves the eyes and says something isn't working yet. So she puts Claire's hair down, and yeah, Claire's hotter when her hair's down, I'll say that. And obviously that's what men would want to see. So Paul asks if she thinks it obscures the line, and she says that Claire is the primordial woman child, and she says to fuck the line, and I think that's really good, the word that Tony says, to fuck the line, fuck that invisible line that says you can't do this. Just go for it. Do what you want to do. Don't let people tell you what you want to do. I love the advice that Tony gives to them. So Mia then eats a granola bar, hoping that it will agree with her and that will help her get stronger. Obviously, you can tell that her diet is definitely not the best and she has a lot of problems. I'm assuming that she's bulimic, and that's really what's going on with her there. So Tony goes over choreography with Claire, tells her to ignore the camera, and all she has to do is go inside, be it live it is in her, and she says to do this. Claire takes off her robe to reveal the dress she's wearing, and by the way, I will say, I really liked her dress. It looked really good on her. She does different poses, they take pictures, all the other dancers watch, and Patrice says that she thought Mia had food poisoning, and Ashley says she doesn't eat in public, and Daphne says to leave her alone, and basically Pasha then talks to Mia, and basically she says she gave quite the performance, and she says he wouldn't know he's blind. He says he's going blind, not deaf. She knocked down a row of girls. She says it was a single wanorexic, as she calls them, and she says it's probably not just a nutrition. It's probably just a nutrition thing, and she had a power board, but he says that she doesn't know that, and she says it's her eye. One is not working right, and it's no big deal. And Pasha asks how she knows that, and he says that she's an enemy of herself. She really sees herself not as good as she wants to be. She obviously doesn't like herself very much, and I really do agree with Pasha on that. I mean, Mia acts confident, but she's really not confident. I think that just makes Mia such more of a compelling character. I mean, we really see here that Mia might act a certain way, but might not actually be that way, and I think it's just really interesting the way they did that. Emily Tyrell, I think her name is, really did all those scenes very, very well, because you really see the fakeness in Mia. I mean, a lot of people, we're starting to realize a lot of people in the show aren't as confident as they seem. While Claire is gaining confidence, Mia is losing confidence. I don't think it's because of Claire. I don't think Mia's ever had this confidence. I think it's always been fake. I think she wants to believe that she is confident when she knows that she's not. I think it definitely is really interesting. Emily Tyra, that's her name. She was incredible in this episode. Really incredible. Some amazing scenes here. Pasha says that she can go to his ophthalmologist and get tested, and she walks away, and Claire does more poses as the photo shoot ends, and Tony tells her that she killed it and that she was a goddess. She says she guessed she was feeling good, and it's a really great scene. It's great to see Claire actually happy. You see her in this episode. She's actually really content with herself. It's weird, but you can really see that, I think both talking to Cameron, having someone to talk to, and her getting the advice from Paul has all been very good, and her shutting Bryan out has been very cathartic for her and really has helped her for the better. So Trey talks to Ross, and by far this was the most that Trey's had to do in any episode, which I really like, because Trey and Ross are very good characters. Trey talks to Ross and asks what's going on with him. He says it's been a long day, and he says he thinks he means a good long couple of weeks because that's how long he's been ignoring him. He says he hopes this isn't about replacing him as the lead dancer for Ruby's, because he spent years as his understudy with a smile on his face because he's his friend and he was happy for him, and as if he can just try to be happy for him because he is, and he doesn't think you should blame. He says Paul wanted him, not him, and that's just the way it goes. Ross says he got it because he's gay, and he's not. He goes to leave, and honestly, I understand what Ross is saying here. Paul obviously respects, women and gays more than he does straight men. You just see that he really doesn't get along with straight men very well. He doesn't. Obviously, he's very gay, and Ross isn't. And Trey stands in front of him after something happened with Paul, and obviously we know that something did happen with Paul. We know that dance that they did, and obviously Ross is not too happy about it. So Daphne praises Claire for the photo shoots, and Claire says she hopes Kiira doesn't throw acid in her face Daphne says acid is a Moscow thing, and Kiira is Ukrainian. She then tells her about the party, and they're the entertainment, and Claire asks what they're supposed to do. Daphne says she doesn't have to get naked, she just has to dance Swan Lake for Russian mobsters, and Claire says it sounds dangerous, but Daphne says it sounds dope, and all the refreshments, and Claire says she can't make it as she already has plans with Cameron, and Daphne says it's a bad idea since management frowns on business outside of the club. She says she won't tell management, it's none of her business who she dates, and she tells her it's not a date, she's merely his escort, and she says that's not true. Daphne says she met him in a strip club, and Claire says he's not a strip club kind of guy, and she leaves. So Claire has a very difficult situation to deal with her. Does she support her best friend and go to this yacht and dance with her? Or does she go with this guy who she clearly has a bond with and clearly does like her, even though her best friend is telling her that she doesn't, he doesn't. It's a very interesting scenario. So Claire opens her bag, finds a ballerina, she sits by the window, calls Bryan, and this was really interesting. She says she knows they haven't spoken since he was here, but she just wants him to know she hopes he's okay, and then she hangs up. And this was very interesting. I think that, even though she clearly, obviously, still doesn't want Bryan in her life, I think she still feels bad for him because she knows what he's gone through. She didn't know all the shit that he really went through, and I like seeing that. So Jasper and Kiira are at this, I don't know what to call it. It was like a drug place. It's not a nightclub, but it's like a drug place. I don't really know what to call it, but they're talking about this cat and how it has one distinction line, muscle, fang, and claw, and in the middle of this conversation, they tell each other that they love each other and that they are their favorite. Now, I was thinking they were going to reveal that Jasper and Kiira are engaged, but then we realize that she gets a text from her husband, Prescott. So yes, Kiira is cheating on Prescott with Jasper, and Jasper is not pleased with Kiira, says Prescott's a kind man who takes care of her. He says Prescott's just waiting for her to retire so he can breed her like an animal, and he says he's sorry. Prescott is none of his business and says to accept his apology, and it's really interesting, these scenes between Kiira and Jasper. I like finding out more about her here. So Paul is with Eduardo at a gay dance club and tells Eduardo how well the photo shoot went. Paul asks where they are. Eduardo says Jason Heights, and he says to listen to him. He's going to drink, dance, and have fun. They toast and drink and start dancing. An older man starts flirting with Paul. Eduardo knocks him out, then they kiss, and I like the chemistry between Paul and Eduardo. I do like it. I think Eduardo is a good boyfriend for Paul. He knows how to control him, and I like seeing that. I like seeing Paul actually happy and not pissed out of his mind. I definitely like that. So Kiira comes home. Prescott asks if she got his calls. He was picking some hot chocolates from him and didn't know she wanted hazelnut or dark. And holy shit, Prescott, how dense you are. I mean, he doesn't suspect a thing. I feel so bad for him. He's such a vulnerable character. I mean, let's face it, Kiira's the one character in the show that you really can't have any sympathy for. You can have sympathy with her to a degree that she was the star and now Claire's not, but she really is doing, I think, the most deceitful things in this show. Out of any character, I think Kiira's probably doing the most deceitful things. She's cheating on her husband, who clearly is very good for her, but she is not satisfied with him, mainly because he's very normal and he's just not that interesting. And Prescott asked if she got his calls, and he was picking some hot chocolate. I just said that. She says she's sorry she's exhausted. He asked her when she's going to stop working so hard. He wishes she'd take better care of herself. She says to warm up the chocolate. She then takes a bath and pleasures herself because obviously she doesn't want to have sex with him. She doesn't kiss him. I mean, I don't see how he doesn't get the clues here, but Prescott clearly, he's just that good of a husband that he doesn't really see the clues. He loves her that much, and it's just really sad to see that she's doing that to him. So Paul and Eduardo have sex. Eduardo says he's beautiful. He knows who he is inside. Claire then has books on top of her and cries, and M.I.A is at the doctor, who goes over procedures with her, asks her if she has any history of substance abuse, and she tells him all the pills that she's taken. He asks if she's endured any stress from work or at home, and she says she just needs to eat more. She says this happened to a girl last season. She went blind right before she got a serious case of the runs. Her colon was perforated, and she had to go to the hospital, lost her place in the corpse. She said the girl auditioned again this year, but the hospital food porked her up, and obviously they're not going to let this girl that's not very skinny not do ballet, because, you can't really do much with a girl that's fat. You really can't. So he says he wants her to see a neurologist just to run a few more tests, and he says it might be a nutrient issue like she suggests, but it's important that they rule things out, and she asks what kind of things. And he says that's for the neurologist to decide. In the meantime, he recommends a multivitamin and to lay off the diet pills. And basically, that's what she plans on doing. So Claire gets the door, and it's Lanny. And Lanny is as much of a stage mom and a critical mom as you can imagine. I mean, the second you meet her, she's complaining about the stairs, and Claire cleans up the place. Lanny complains about the stairs. Claire says she must be Mia's mom, and Lanny is enchanted by Claire. She says she has good looks, and she says she must be the competition. She tells her Mia's not home. She says she heard her leave about an hour ago. Lanny says that she could use all the help she could get. She asks what her father does, and Claire says that he's on disability. And Lanny asks if Claire will help her with her bag, and I love the scene where Lanny's like, "Don't touch my jewelry." I thought that was very funny. I like how, even though Lanny, is very much just a really bad mother, I like seeing her, just be the typical rich mother. It was very funny. Yes, it was a stereotype, but it worked well for this scene. Eduardo wakes up, and Paul is gone. Paul is at the company in the middle of a hangover. Trey comes up to him, says he's sorry to bother him. He says he doesn't want to involve any lawyers, so he thought it best to come straight to him. Paul asks what the fuck he's talking about, and Trey says that Ross is very upset and says Ross told him at the private rehearsal he held with him a few weeks ago. And Paul says he holds private rehearsals with all of his soloists, and Trey says that's what he told him. But Ross is insistent, and Paul asks what he wants. He asks if he actually believes that Flowers will protect him from getting fired, and obviously, Trey's accusing him of basically manhandling Ross, which, I can understand what he's saying, but Paul didn't do anything wrong. He just kind of wanted to, work on this thing with Ross, and I think it's interesting what Trey is saying here. What did Paul really want to do? Did he actually want to help out Ross, or was he actually trying to sexually harass him? I really am not sure. Paul says to go to class, and then we'll discuss what becomes of him later. Trey says he could probably smooth things over with Ross as a thank you for giving him the generous opportunity to partner with Kiira and rubies. And Paul says the little fairy's a set of brass balls. He says he's sure he will be dazzling in rubies. He says he looks forward to the announcement that says he'll be taking over the lead for good. And Claire then tells Daphne that she will go with her to the yachts. And Daphne asks about Cameron, and Claire says he's just another bullshit savior trying to get her real name. And if he wants to see her, she's in the club twice a week. And I think Claire is really going to regret that decision after the end of the episode, because, of course, the end of the episode is crazy. We'll get into that. Daphne says that she's corrupted her. They go to rehearsal. We see Trey and Ross, and things really aren't looking good. Paul then comes home looking for Eduardo, who has left shit on the bed. I mean, he literally just shit on the bed and left, so I don't know if, obviously, Eduardo was probably quite heartbroken that Paul left, and Paul just needs to explain with him what's going to happen. I'm assuming these two are done. I'm assuming these two are done because, he just left him like that, so we'll have to see what happens there. Is Paul going to make an effort? I'm not really sure. We'll have to see. So, basically, they go, but then we see Claire and Daphne go to the yacht. Sergei says they are his guests of honor. He welcomes them. He goes to show them where they will perform, and they see a young child is serving wine. And this is when they start to realize that something's off. There are all these little girls, basically. Like, I'm saying, like, preteen girls, like 11, 10 to 12. 10 to 13 is probably their ages. That's how young. I'll say the oldest is probably 14. That's probably the oldest we're going. And, obviously very creepy. He shows them the stage design like an enchanted forest. He says the musicians are all the way from St. Petersburg, and he helped them with the passports. He introduces some of his colleagues to Claire and Daphne, who speak in Russian. They toast to Sergei. Lanny's with Mia. She says she has nothing to be proud of. She says she paid for the classes, and she sits at home on her ass, and it's clear that Lanny isn't supportive of her daughter at all. She says her roommate has her acting her, and she's gorgeous. No wonder Paul's got her dancing up front, and she basically tells her she needs to get her shit together, not worry about her food poisoning, and clearly does not care about her daughter. She really doesn't. And Mia, we can see, still has problems with her eyes, sees her wine glass, and says whore, and it says whore on it. Her mom is flirting. Mia gets up and flirts with these men that Laney's flirting with, and she starts getting attracted to this guy, Nick. Now, basically, she asks Nick to buy her a drink, and then Mia takes Nick into the bathroom where they start to have sex, but I love this scene because, it didn't seem like Mia really cared too much about what happened with Bryan. She didn't bring it up much, but here is where she really has to face it, because now she's having sex, and this is the first time that she's had sex with a man since Bryan took advantage of her, and she remembers what Bryan did to her. She tells him to stop, pushes him away, and she's very much acting like Claire. This is incredible. I love the way that they wrote this, because this is something that Claire would do. This is not something that Mia would do, but it is something that Claire would do, and I love the way that this was written, because obviously we have yet to see Mia act like this and, lash out at men like Claire would. I mean, it was very interesting to watch, and I definitely really love that. He says that she's crazy, and he leaves as she breaks down the room, and you really see that she doesn't want to face what she's going through. I really felt bad for Mia in this scene. So on the yacht, Claire and Daphne get ready for the performance, and Sergei introduces them. Claire's at first. She tells Sergei that the floor is damp and has the young girl clean up. They're laughing at her, and Claire is very disturbed, obviously. This little girl is just a young girl, and they're, laughing at her like she's this big laughing stock, and they clean the floor. Claire starts performance, and as she finishes, they applaud, and she danced really flawlessly. It was good to see her dance there. Sergei gives her flowers, says that was sublime. Daphne says it's a tough act to follow, and following her is like following Glass Note, and wishes her luck. And we don't see Daphne's performance because the ending of this episode. Holy shit, the ending of this episode. Let's just get into this. She goes where basically she went to her room basically to change, and she hears these men, and they're most likely, I'm basically going to say that they're probably raping these girls, and they are their prostitutes. That's what I'm saying, that these girls are prostituting themselves. They're young, and either this is like a human trafficking situation. I mean, there could be a various amount of things going on there. Either way, it's disgusting, and it was very hard to watch, I have to say. Definitely, maybe even harder to watch than the scene between Bryan and M.I.A in episode 4. She thanks him. He says he knows. Basically, we see a man comes up behind her, and one of the Sergei's men says not to touch the ballerinas. She thanks him. He says he knows she can handle herself and says he'll be outside. Claire then packs, and she thinks that Teddy comes out, but then the younger girl comes out, and she shows Claire what they did to her. She has like a bite mark right on her. I mean, they really hurt her, and says she is from Pavlovo, and she wants Claire to inform her family where she is, and you're not sure if Claire is going to do this. I mean, I don't think Claire really knows what to do, but this is a little girl, again, who is being treated like this slave by these, men, and it's really interesting what's going there. I mean, we knew that Sergei was obviously bad news. I mean, even though he was acting like he was with Claire, we knew that he was bad news. The only reason he acts like that is because he's a fan of ballet. Obviously, we knew he was bad news. He's a gangster. There's something shady going on with him. And I couldn't help but wonder how Claire's night with Cameron would have gone. And now she can't. I feel like she really has that regret in this scene. She's like, holy shit, I should have gone with Cameron. But I also feel like she genuinely wants to help this girl. And, basically, Teddy asks she's got everything she needs. Claire packs a bag. Daphne says a girl could get used to this Prima treatment, and Daphne clearly has no idea what's going on. And I was wondering if Claire was going to tell her, but I think Claire realizes that this is not her place to do that. She thanks her for coming and says she owes her one. Claire keeps an eye out on, like, I'm going to call them the prostitutes, because that's what I think they are. And she doesn't see the girl there. The young blonde girl is not there. Sergei says they remind him tonight that he has a soul. He thanks them, says they do anything for him. And Claire tells Sergei there was a girl that wiped the floor, and she didn't see her get in the van. He says there are many of them who can, and they can't keep track of them, and they then leave. Claire looks back as Daphne says she nailed the performance, and that's how the episode ends. So, really hard stuff to watch in this episode, but a really amazing episode overall. I really loved a lot of the stuff that happened in this episode. I mean, there was some really amazing scenes here. Is Claire going to help out this young girl? I'm not really sure. I mean, I don't think that they're just going to drop this. I think Claire's going to try to help her out. I mean, obviously, she gave her information, so I think she should help out this little girl. But what is Sergei really doing? I mean, we don't really know what he's doing with these little girls, and this is definitely going to be a concern to Claire, who I feel is really going to be worried at this club of what's going to happen to her. I mean, they treat these young girls like they would strippers. I mean, it's very interesting the way that goes on. I mean, if they were like 20-something, fine, but these are young, like 10, 11, 12, 13-year-old girls. They don't want this, obviously, and it's really crazy what they're doing. We'll have to find out what's going on there. M.I.A. Is M.I.A going to confess to Claire what happened with Bryan? I mean, she has to. We see that M.I.A is stressed out. She definitely starting to act like Claire, and I really like seeing that. The connections between her and Claire are great. I really like what we're seeing with that and what's going to happen with that. I mean, is she going to get her life together? I'm not really sure. I kind of feel like this is going to end with M.I.A not being able to get her life together and becoming worse. I wouldn't be surprised if M.I.A gets worse and worse as this goes on, and the only person she can turn to is Claire. I mean, she pretty much is kind of pushing everyone aside. You can tell that M.I.A is pushing everyone aside. Claire pretty soon is going to be the only person in her life that actually she can talk to, and we're going to see that definitely. It's going to be interesting. Let's talk about Paul and Eduardo. What's going to happen there? Are they done as we know it? I think they are. What's going to happen between Paul and Ross? Do you think that Paul actually wanted to sexually harass Ross, or was he just trying to rehearse with him? I'm not really sure. I mean, Trey's convinced that he did want to hurt him, but we're going to have to see what happens with that. That's going to be very interesting to see what they do with that. Trey obviously is going to continue his performance in Ruby's regardless, but he obviously is not happy with what Paul did. He thinks that Paul is this whore, and he wants nothing to do with him, obviously, so, which I don't blame for. I can clearly understand that. I feel so bad for Prescott. I mean, he's got to find out at some point. He's got to find out that his wife is cheating on him. He's got to find that out because it doesn't sound logical. She works late every night. She's always coming home at different times. I mean, it just doesn't make sense. That doesn't really make sense. And Obviously, we are left to believe that Kiira's probably done this for years, and her and Jasper, I'm not really sure what's going to happen between them. I don't like Jasper. I'm going to say that right now. I don't like his character. I find him very strange and weird. I don't know why Kiira finds an attraction to him. That's really my only thing here. I don't really like Jasper as a character, but I can see, why she kind of has that attraction, and we'll have to see what happens with that. Claire calling Bryan. What's going to happen there? Is she going to meet up with Bryan again? And also, is Romeo going to learn of Bryan's true intentions? Because obviously, he doesn't know what Bryan actually did to Claire and all the things that Claire has gone through with Bryan. He doesn't know about any of that. I also felt really bad for Cam. Is the stuff between Claire and Cameron, is that over? I mean, I really hope that they can rekindle their relationship, because it seemed like he really genuinely cared about her and actually did want to talk to her, and I think she really regrets not going on that date with him. Hopefully she tries to get a second date. I don't know if he's going to let her. He's probably going to be very upset with her, but we'll have to see what happens with that. But let me know what you guys saw this episode. By far best episode of the season. Really intense stuff in this episode. And everything that happened, I could take seriously. Even the stuff with, like, Eduardo leaving Paul's shit. I mean, I can understand why he did that. He obviously was really upset with Paul, and he just felt, you know what, I'll just leave him shit because he left me shit. I'll leave him, he let me deal with shit. I'll leave him shit. And I thought that was definitely really great stuff. Let me know what you guys thought of this episode. I thought this was an amazing episode. 3 episodes left of this show, guys. 3 episodes left. I will finish it this weekend. I will see you guys in the next video, which will be for tonight's episode of The Nick, and I will see you guys for that. Okay, bye.